Thank you very much, Sheila. Can everyone see the slides? Because I'm going to not read them, because there'll be some pictures. I just need to make sure that everyone can see. Is that okay? Great. Okay, so is this the same battle that we've been having ever since Leonardo was doing inventions? Perhaps. What I want to talk about is a little bit about how the arts can help us to respond to what might be described as a vortex. I wasn't here for the entire week, but I understand that you probably now know a lot about what is going to happen to the economy over the next 2 to 3 years, and that it's not good. Is that all right? Can you hear me? Okay. It's grim, perhaps could be described as a vortex. And is this a good thing or a bad thing? Are we going to take an optimistic or pessimistic attitude? Is the glass full or empty? Well, I can say that from an artist's point of view, any decrease in funding is never good, but there's always a resilience and an optimism among the arts community. So we're saying that perhaps the glass is actually half full. Because during the Celtic Tiger economy, there are questions about the values, the materialism, and indeed the lack of, we could say, an inner life that characterised some of the activities in society. Indeed, some of my most closest friends and colleagues said that the characteristic most repeated about the Celtic Tiger years was that it was a jungle out there. Now, if we take this as an opportunity, the downturn in the economy, perhaps we can say that it's a chance to change the paradigm with which we look at society and shape our expectations of the kind of world we want. This is a chance, and I know this has been discussed earlier in the week, about changing our minds, taking stock, calling a halt to relentless and unsustainable growth, and to say, what is it that we want? What can be sustained in the long term? And what are the cultural and social values that we want underpinning our lives and the lives of our children? In this reflection, the arts can make a major contribution. What you see there is an image of a 50 million mark note, which was distributed in the Weimar Republic. In the Weimar Republic, currency was wheeled around in wheelbarrows because of the rate of inflation. So the economy really went down the tubes. I'm a little bit worried that the Minister has also used German imagery. Hope there's not a theme developing here. But I did want to say about the Weimar Republic was, even though the economy was in disastrous shape, it is to the arts of that period that we look when we ask for inspiration about German artistic prowess. We had the very best of visual artists, writers, dramatists, Brecht's early years, Weil, Otto Dix, George Grosz, Georg Trakl, August Strahm, the people who were the best of the 20th century European artists were in this society. We have the origin of films. The cabinet of Dr. Caligari doesn't refer to our own cabinet. It refers to this rather exceptional 1919 film, but the very, very beginning of cinema. This was the time when there were really brilliant ideas and where artists were looking at society, talking about it and reassessing its values. Fritz Lang's Metropolis, known to everyone. Georg Grosz, The City. You can see the teeming discontent, masses of poverty, all reflected in the arts. Otto Dix, again, he looks here at the disabled after the First World War. The arts of that time, I put in this tired-looking journalist because I know the journalists and media people here are feeling a bit fagged out at the end of the week. But it is to the end. When we look back at that period, we don't remember that the economy was in disarray, apart from the 50 million note, which actually only lasted 6 weeks. They had to then print 100 million mark notes. But we don't remember that. We remember the artists. Now, in Ireland, I would say that we have a very particular relationship with the artist. And the artists in Ireland, like ones in the Weimar Republic, can help us to reflect and can help us to take stock of society at this time of change, just like they did in the Weimar Republic. But what I would say is slightly different about artists in Ireland is that artists in Ireland can also do other things. There's a very particular relationship between Ireland and the arts, and I would call it Ireland's unique selling point. The Minister talked about cultural distinctiveness. It's the work of artists to interpret and to render that distinctiveness. The reason why I'm using this USP here is a unique selling point is what makes a country different. I think we can use that in our economic recovery. A USB, do people recognise that? It's a Universal Service Bus. That's what USB stands for. And the idea of a Universal Service Bus is that it's a computer link that connects the hard drive to various different peripherals of all kinds. I like to think that right throughout the world, artists connect the hard drive of societies to peripheral perspectives of all kinds, alternative perspectives, new ideas, visions, imaginations. But in Ireland, and very particularly in Ireland, we don't only have that renewal and reflection on society, but we have a very, very special relationship with the arts. Now, in his introduction, Joe has said already about the Nobel Prizes, and this prize winning has been sustained into our contemporary days and is continuing to be sustained. It's unbelievable that a country the size of Ireland has the proportion of artistic prize winners that it does. And then more prizes, not simply in literature, Nobel, Booker, but also our theatre. And we have local man here, Brian Friel. But what is it about Ireland that makes this achievement, this artistic work so respected and so successful in an international frame? Well, there's an emerging literature on this, but in winning the, if you like, the Olympic Games of the arts, the gold medalists in Ireland, 4 themes are emerging as to why it's so successful. A native ability, something about millennia of people living in Ireland, and over the years we have developed this native intelligence of how to work with symbol, allegory and metaphor, and that is something that stays with us, part of our genes, part of our DNA. It's a learned tradition. We have very embedded, very valuable traditions, both in the traditional arts but also with language. Kevin Whelan, the historian, says that the particular position of Ireland gives a bifurcated view of the world. It means we can hold 2 thoughts in our mind at the same time. We can look 2 directions at once. And this, he reckons, might come from the fact that we speak English in Ireland, but we have our own language as well. We're in Europe, but we're an Anglophone country, and we're halfway between Europe and America. So this in-between station that has characterised the life of Ireland over the past many years has given us this very, very clear, distinctive perspective on the world. The arts in Ireland have been endorsed by communities. They're made at community level. And there's been public investment, again, as Minister Mansfield said, over the past 50 years, since 1951. So we're different. Now, can this unique selling point, can this help us to get out of the abyss of economic downturn? I don't know the detail of the economic recovery plan, but what it seems to me is it has, just from listening to the debates over the week, is that it has 3 elements: fiscal stability, the banking sector being sorted out, so we need credit for working capital to finance growth, and then finally enterprise development. And my contention is that the arts, the question we need to ask ourselves in the arts sector is, can the arts, which is our unique selling point, the thing that makes us distinctive, original and authentic in the world, can this help us out? Can these huge resources help us out of the economic abyss? And I would say yes. If we look, I don't think we can do much in the arts about fiscal stability. I don't think we can do much about banking, but I think we can do something about enterprise development. And I just want to refer back to the competitiveness debate that happened here on Wednesday. If we are moving out of a situation where, and those terrible headlines in The Independent, where it said that the hourly wage was undercut by €12. Don't know if people remember that headline on Wednesday or Thursday. But if we're trying to move out of a low-wage, manufacturing-based economy and into high value added, then it's into the arts sectors that we need to look. Now, I have a quiz question here. What is it that these 2 people have in common? It's not a very good picture of Joe there. Sorry about that, Joe. What do you think Michael Jackson and Joe Mulholland have in common? Well, I can tell you, they both understand the value of intellectual property. And yes. And I'll just explain it. Michael Jackson bought up the copyright royalties of the Beatles about, 10, 15 years ago, and he paid about 40 million for them. Now they're worth about 500 million. And the Beatles, which are now the widows of the people who are deceased, and the existing Beatles are trying to buy them back. He understood that if there's a good or a property with something like a Beatles song, it absolutely is priceless. So whatever you need to pay for it is going to be good value. Joe, I think, understands it in a slightly different way, in that Glenties is a wonderful place. But would all the people be here for an entire week in these numbers and giving this sustained level of concentration to drinking in the hotel and having good meals here? No, we're here because the ideas, the imagination, the possibility of imagining a new future it hangs around the place for this week when the MacGill Summer School is on. And that's an intellectual property which adds value to the experience of being in Glenties. So, So what I'm saying is that there's a little clue in this about how we might be able to develop. And I want to look very briefly now at the work of Elizabeth Currid, who has examined New York. And she says in a book called The Warhol Economy that, yes, the distinctiveness and originality of a place, yes, it encourages tourists to come. As we know, they don't come to Ireland for the weather, they come for the very particular culture we have here, which is, yes, mainly the arts, but also things like food and socialising patterns. But cultural tourism, big industry, very important for jobs. I'll give you some statistics later, but just on the principle, on the concept, cultural tourism, very important issue for economic recovery, because it's probably the only kind of tourism that's going to grow. Attracting foreign investment and skilled labour pools of people who can work in Google, Microsoft, and the sons and daughters of Google and Microsoft. These are people who only will settle, live, remain in Ireland if there's an active, creative and inspiring and stimulating environment here, social environment here. Foreign direct investment, people are worried about the impact of our economic downturn on our international reputation, particularly in the States, which is our main source of foreign direct investment. So the distinctiveness, the intellectual property, the intellectual goods, the creative work, all contributes to making that happen, that foreign investment and skilled labour pools. But the third area, and this is the one I want to concentrate on, is artistic and cultural occupations and enterprises themselves are crucially important. These are I was really glad to hear the Minister say that people who work in the arts are not less important than people who work in manufacturing or who work in farming or in medicine or in any other sectors. And Elizabeth Currid, looking at New York, found that it's not the financial services or medicine, which are big industries in New York, but it's actually the fashion, the art, the music. These are the industries which keep the city going. And I think the key to economic recovery in Ireland is to replicate that commitment to the creative industries here. Now, depressing news is Board Snip. I was very, very disappointed to read Board Snip, not because the arts is afraid to take its share of the pain. We all know that public spending has to be reduced. But I have 4 quotes from Board Snip here, and I've cut out all details of money or all details of individual organisations, but I just wanted to point out what I think is very poor concept behind the rationale for the cuts. It says here, given the size of the country, it's not financially feasible to provide for a full range of arts activities. Cultural projects are not affordable, cannot be sustained given other public expenditure priorities, or there is more pressing spending elsewhere. Now, I'm saying that this is a rationale or a logic or an argument which is flawed. I just want to take a brief example of the traditional arts. The arts are not public services in the sense that they're public spending in a simple way. The arts are complex and economically driven industries which have 3 major manifestations. Yes, there is a public sector element, a public service element. Fiachta is the director of the Abbey Theatre, and that's part of the public responsibility to reflect our society and to look at how theatre interacts with the day-to-day life of the nation. But there are other elements as well. And in the traditional arts, we have a very clear example of Riverdance. Joe said it at the beginning. Riverdance has been putting, in the words of Fintan Valley, putting food in the mouths of traditional artists since 1995. So it's kind of fading a little bit now, but Riverdance is a phenomenon. It is a global corporate entertainment industry, and it's based on the practice of traditional arts, which happens in pubs and in community halls around the country. So it's not simply a public sector, public service approach that needs to be taken to the traditional arts economy. It's an approach to an ecosystem where the publicly funded part, the privately and commercially economically generating part, and the other part, which is the core of the practice, the voluntary community work. It's not funded, it happens in families, it happens in small groups where traditional musicians come together to pass on the tradition. That's the core of it. So in order to have an economy which uses our greatest asset, which is the arts, we need to look at it in this broad way: commercial, public service and voluntary sides of a sector. And I felt that was really missing from the board SNP approach. Fintan Valley's done a lot of work in this area. He says here about the outlets for traditional music, and you can see they go from tourism, album sales, right through to radio and television performance. In other words, it's a significant economic and commercial sector. So why would we not put in the 30% of funding which would sustain that into the future? I think it's very short-sighted not to do that. One thing for policymakers: if we want to adopt an approach which is investing in the arts, we need to make sure that we don't wipe out the core practice or the wellspring of where that wonderful creativity comes from. I'm glad that during the course of the Riverdance success, the Arts Council started to take the traditional arts very seriously and looked at ways of investing a little bit more money into that very important bit of practice, because we were absolutely determined that the individual song collector, the small group, the family who wants to travel around, tour, learn new styles, new traditions, new songs, wouldn't be wiped out and wouldn't be forced into a commercial environment. Okay. Now, very briefly, to conclude, I want to say that if we accept that intellectual property or the intellectual value added is one of the ways we can go, then we can absolutely put the arts at the centre of recovery. I'm going to speed through these very, very quickly because they're just statistics and they don't mean a lot. They don't mean a lot in a talk, but I want these to be on the record. There are 50,000 people working in the creative industries and the arts in Ireland. There could be another 10,000 with marginal extra investment, because we're very low in the ratio of creative and cultural jobs we have compared to other countries where culture and creative industries are important. And if you don't believe me, ask one of the usual suspects, Kevin Spacey. Secondly, if we're concerned about the reputation of Ireland abroad, we look to the arts. The arts have never let us down. Our favourite American presidents here, over a 30-40-year span, are constantly reinforcing the fact that the Irish are characterised by the quality of the artistic work here. So it's an international calling card for Ireland we have. So we must protect that. We can't devalue that currency. Then finally, on the smart economy, if you look at what the IDA are doing internationally, they're saying that the Irish mind is a mind which gives this ability of to create, to find new ideas, new ways, new innovations. It's a characteristic of the country. And look at those, they're all artists, and they're done by Louis Le Brocq. Finally, if we look at any of these industries which have shaped our leisure experiences and reshaped them, they're all involved in that extra value-added area. Our minister believes it. So can we make a paradigm shift? I hope we can. There's lots of evidence. Visual arts, festivals, all create work, all create wealth for the economy. Individual artists are micro-enterprises. John McHugh, from an individual artist who's a number of hats. He's from Westport Artist Studios, he's from MacGill, and he's from the Scollacla in MacGill. He speaks very fluently about the fact that these people are micro industries, and if we value and support them with a small bit of investment money, then they can help to carry the economy to another level. Very good report in Donegal, another part of the evidence launched last week, which said that 380,000 visitors come to Donegal for 39 of the 429 cultural projects and facilities that are available here. Western Development Report, everyone will know that. So I'm going to give the last word to an artist, John McHugh. He says the arts are a necessary, vital and core element in building a sustainable, high-quality, creative, innovative, imaginative, green and most of all competitive economy and a community, and surely that's what we want, because nourishment is not all about calories. Thank you very much.